All right. Hello, folks, and welcome to WTF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm going to be the host today, Jim Day. Unfortunately, Mr. Tony Sincata cannot join us tonight. He's in Bangkok having his sex change operation. But don't worry, he'll be back next week. He'll just be Tony with an eye with a little heart over the top of it when he's back. So you can congratulate him then. So let's get into week one. We're here. Fantasy football is here finally. After all the talk, we finally get to see what happens. And we have a special guest host tonight, Mr. Brian Drake from Fighting Chance Fantasy, where I also write. Brian, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Jim. And boy, I didn't realize that about Tony. I'll have to send him a card and maybe some chocolates and see what he's doing Friday night.
Well, there you go. I'm sure he's out there and sniffing around somewhere. So come on, we got to jump right into it. We got to talk about Le'Veon Bell, and not so much Le'Veon Bell because everybody's talking about Le'Veon Bell, but let's talk about the question I've been asked about a gazillion times today. How much money should they spend of their fab budget to pick up Connor? Some said if they had Bell, and some said if they don't have Bell. How much would you spend? Let's say you have $100 of fab budget for the entire year. How much would you spend right now to pick up James Conner?
Well, first of all, I think this whole James Conner situation is nonsense. People are going to lose their minds on this, and then they're going to be so upset when Le'Veon Bell reports in like 2 days. There's no chance he's passing up an $8 million game or $8 million. I know because he gets a game check. He only has to show up on Saturday, and then he gets paid for this week. I don't care what the agent said. That's all BS. He's coming. He's getting paid. Maybe he doesn't play this week, but he's gonna get his money. This James Conner thing is just going to be a way for you to take advantage of dopes in your fantasy league and say, "Hey, you got Le'Veon Bell. I got James Conner. How about you throw me a legit player for him?" If you could go get say you go to a guy and go, "Give me Zach Ertz. I'll give you James Conner." Do that in a heartbeat because people are morons. If I had to throw something in because he's going to play week one. I'd maybe go $15, $20. I don't want to go crazy. He's not going to be there. If your team is that bad that you have to play James Conner this week, you drafted wrong because you should have thousands of more other better options than James Conner, who last year, week one, when he played, also crapped the bed. Even though Le'Veon Bell was there, he was awful. He's not a talented back. And, if you want to go out and blow your whole fab budget on it, congratulations. Your whole league fee is, just burn it and light it on fire because you've wasted your time.
Well, now let's turn the opposite side here. Look, I'm not a big Le'Veon Bell supporter. I've had my doubts about him showing up in time for week one for a while now. I think that he's really out to try and prove a point. He wants to get paid. There is every chance in my mind that he doesn't start the season and he doesn't come in until, maybe week 10. Because at that point, he still gets the year accrued. He can move on next year, get a big contract with somebody else. It won't be with the Steelers. So maybe he does have that in mind. Because if he comes back now and gets hurt, then he's screwed and he's not going to get anything. I don't like this guy anyway. We know he's an idiot. He does too much stuff off field, gets caught for it way too often for my liking. I don't think Pittsburgh wants to pay him a big check knowing that, one more mistake by him off the field gets him a 1-year suspension. So, I think they're ready to move on anyway. Is Connor that guy? Who knows at this point? We don't really know. But I do know that, a number one running back on Pittsburgh for the long haul over a season is not a bad thing to have. So, I understand what you're saying about Connor being nothing, and it may end up being that way. But, if you're in a league where you have Bell and you're a little strapped at running back, I could say blowing a little bit of money on the fab for him is not a bad option just in case.
I think we know Le'Veon Bell is a guy who wants money, though, and he wants to get paid. I can't see him skipping 10 weeks of the year and all those game checks just to prove a point to say, oh, I'm not going to get hurt. I mean, if you want money that bad, you're going to show up and get that money.
Yeah, but he's not looking at, $8 million money. To him, that's not big money. He was offered, $14 million, turned it down. So, that to him, that he's looking at these contracts that are being signed by Odell and all these other guys for 90 million, 95 million. That's what he wants. So for him, 8 million to him is a little drop in the bucket.
There's got to be a smart team and a GM out there right now who goes, "Hey, Pittsburgh, like here's a second round pick. What do you think? You want to throw them our way? Get that headache?" Because from everything that came out today, it looks like there's about to be a mutiny in that locker room. So, if I'm the Patriots, not that they would ever send him to the Patriots, but the 49ers, team like that, say, "Hey, why don't you get this headache out of here? Send him to a whole different conference." That makes complete sense to me. I mean, if I'm San Francisco, I'm on the phone with them yesterday trying to make a pick, trying to send something.
And I'm with you on that. I agree with you. No doubt about it. Look, the man can play when he's on the field. He's got off-field issues, but somebody's going to pay him for it. It doesn't matter. But at this point, we just don't know if it's going to be the Steelers. And, we've seen the Steelers play hardball with too many people in the past to want to keep going on with this. And when you got guys in your own locker room giving you crap because you're not there, that doesn't set a good precedent. It doesn't set anything good, because now even if he comes back, now you got all these bad feelings brewing in that locker room. Pittsburgh may just say, you know what, screw it. I'll save the money on the cap, get rid of him, and maybe I can make some more moves.
Can they rescind his franchise tag at this point since he hasn't signed it? Would that make him a free agent?
They can absolutely rescind the tag. I don't know if that actually automatically makes him a free agent, though. I'd have to look at that. That's a good question. That would be interesting, but they could definitely take it back from him at this point if he hasn't signed it.
But what we're talking about, everybody out there listening in fantasy land, how much should you spend on James Conner? I mean, is he a transcendent talent? No. To me, he's, is he better than Alfred Morris or Adrian Peterson or somebody you maybe picked up off the scrap heap? Yeah, probably, and he's in a good offense. But I'm not blowing my whole fab budget on him pre-week 1. It's such a long season. You don't know what's going to happen out there. And, they have other guys they could get in the mix too. Maybe, Jalen Samuels. They even have that guy from the Patriots, the ghost of Ridley on their team. I mean, they're going to throw the ball over a yard. Everyone, from all accounts, says they're going to go a lot more shotgun. They're going to go a lot more no huddle. So is James Conner really a shotgun back? And I don't really see that. To me, and when I saw him at Pittsburgh, he's more of a guy that's going to line up and try to grind it between the tackles.
Well, and I totally agree with that. But at the same time, when you have the receivers that Pittsburgh does, it definitely will open holes up the middle for any running back, just because you have to give those receivers respect, especially with the addition of rookie James Washington. Just gives them another deep threat. And I agree with you. I think Roethlisberger is going to throw it a ton. But even with that throwing a ton, they're going to need somebody who's going to do goal line work, and there's going to need somebody to run the ball. They can't throw the ball 700 times a year.
Yeah, in fantasy football, running backs are worth their weight in gold. I always say that. And if you can get a starting running back, be it Peyton Barber, Alfred Morris, Adrian Peterson, whoever it is, and they're starting, they have value. But I am under the belief that Le'Veon Bell is going to show up. So I'm not going to go and say, here, put $85 of my $100 into James Conner, because I just think it's going to look bad in a week or two when Le'Veon Bell is behind center.
Well, and it's very possible. I actually did have 2 leagues run waivers tonight, and in fact saw 2 people spending their entire $100
oh my God
on Conner for this week. So I guess we'll find out how that works out for them. I was not one of them. So we'll see. Let's talk some of this other stuff. We're starting to hear Evan Ingram is coming off the concussion protocol, should be good to go week 1. What's your thoughts on Evan Ingram this year? I know he had a brilliant rookie season last year, but all of a sudden now all the weapons surrounding him, does that affect Ingram this year?
I'm not an Eli Manning guy. If anybody's watching this on YouTube, you can see my Philadelphia Eagles t-shirt. Evan Ingram is supremely talented, and he's not a tight end. He's just another wide receiver, essentially, out on the field. I think a lot of his stats were padded and aided by the fact that you had everybody and their brother go down. Shepard, Beckham, Marshall. There was nobody left for Eli to throw the ball to. I mean, you're throwing to who they have, Tavares King and all just jabronis that out there. He was the only man in town. But it's going to be harder this year to get all those same targets, especially with Beckham back and healthy and a running game. to lean on. He's going to be good. Don't get me wrong. Tight end's a wasteland. So if you can get him as your starting tight end, God bless you. But don't expect him to have Gronk-like numbers. But, hey, if you can get him, in the 7th round, I don't want to reach too early on him. Wherever you got him the past few weeks, that's good. You know what? I'd rather take the value in David Njoku 3 rounds later.
Ooh, I like Njoku too, but I don't think he's going to come close to Ingram numbers. And that's not just because I'm a Giants fan. It's just because I think Ingram is really going to be I think he is that good. I think he's going to be one of those guys who becomes a top 3, top 4 tight end every year and is in that discussion. He's got the talent. He makes the plays. I don't see that changing anytime soon.
I just really worry about these guys with concussions. Those are a tricky thing. You never like to see that with anybody. And already having one early on here in camp. Hopefully he's okay, because you get another one of those, week 2 or so. Who knows? He could be sitting down for a month or so.
Yeah, but you know what? You could say that about half the players in the NFL. If you're really going to be worried about that, then you probably shouldn't be. You should probably go play fantasy golf if you're worried about that. Let's face it. Not really too often those golfers get hit over the head with golf clubs. So
I'm trying to find the latest news on Le'Veon Bell, and crawling across my floor might be the largest spider I've ever seen in my life. I'm wondering now how it got into my basement and where it's going. And hopefully my wife is upstairs in bed, because if she saw this thing, she would lose her ever-loving mind.
You gotta love stuff.
I'm just going to throw an empty beer bottle at it in a minute.
My wife would go hunt it down and kill it. She doesn't like bugs in her house. So one of the things we did this week at Fighting Chance Fantasy is we put out our predictions for the year. Who we like in each of the divisions, who we think is going to be in the Super Bowl and winning, and then also, our fantasy picks of who's going to be the fantasy MVP, the rookie of the year, comeback player of the year. So, give us a little breakdown on your picks and what you like about them.
Let me pull this up here, because I was just going through everybody's picks earlier today, and I always like seeing that. The funny thing is going through last year's picks and seeing how horrible everybody really was. There was some really shady stuff last year, but let's see. What did?
Well, neither one of us was involved last year. So
no,
that's a good thing.
I read through it. It was yikes. So yeah, check it out over at fightingchancefantasy.com. There's your picks. Let me see what I did here. So picking divisions was easy. We won't go through all that yet, just to see the teams. But in terms of fantasy, I said for the fantasy MVP, it's going to be Dalvin Cook, and this is a guy who 3 months ago, when I learned of my draft position in my big league of note, I told everybody there, I go, I'm taking Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook is that good. I don't care about the injury and now the offensive line. In that offense, with that skill, the amount of balls he's going to catch and the game script they could have because their defense is so good, he is going to get touches upon touches upon touches. And if you can grab him in the back half of the first round, he's going to set you up for just a fine season. So I have Dalvin Cook as my fantasy MVP. No doubt about it. He's going to return so much good value at the end of the first round.
Well, I definitely don't hate that. I actually have quite a few shares of Cook all over the place. A lot of the most recent drafts, I was taking him at the end of the first round and then coming back and getting McCaffrey in the beginning of the second round, and just love that start with the two of them. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking for big things from the two of them as well. But my choice for fantasy MVP is going to be Odell Beckham. He went out, he got paid, he's happy. He's going to be on that field. And, I think this is the year where he just shuts it all down. We're going to see 1,500 yards. We're going to see 15 touchdowns. And he's just going to put it down across the board and lead the league in both categories.
And I'm not a Giants fan by any stretch, but Odell Beckham is so damn good. He is so talented. I mean, it's scary. If you're a fantasy player and you're going up against him, you just wonder, this guy could go off for 160 and 3 today, so you just never know. So he's a great player and talented, and as an Eagles fan, I'm scared every time he lines up against us because he's so damn good.
Okay, well, real quick, let's just break the thoughts real quick. As an Eagles fan, let's break it down a little bit. Mm-hmm. Tell us your thoughts on what people should expect tomorrow night from Nick Foles.
Listen, Nick Foles, if you watch the preseason, was hot garbage. Okay, that's Nick Foles. Nick Foles, had the greatest few game run to the playoffs of any backup you want to say in NFL history. Better than Hostetler, better than anybody you can put out there. He had just an insane few games for the Philadelphia Eagles. But there's a reason Nick Foles isn't a starting quarterback in the NFL for some team. It's because he's just average. He's a game manager. He's a guy that they needed to rework the whole offense around and put in these RPOs and things that fit his, former basketball player skill set. He's going to be okay. He's going to have weeks where, the Eagles look good, maybe next week, against Tampa Bay. But I think, to be honest, I think the Eagles get beat, and they get beat by 10 points tomorrow night. You're looking at a team with no Alshon. You're looking at a team with Jordan Hicks isn't going to, Nigel Bradham's not going to play. Mac Hollins isn't going to play. You got a backup quarterback who had a horrendous preseason. So, I wouldn't go out and pick up Nick Foles if you're a Wentz owner thinking like, oh, I can just put the Super Bowl MVP in and he's going to get me 25 fantasy points. I don't see it. I like other guys in that game, which we'll get to. But as for Nick Foles, God bless him for what he did for me last year, but I have zero faith in him tomorrow night.
Okay, so then let's move on. The next pick is Rookie of the Year, and I actually love your pick.
Yeah, this is a guy who, if you can go out tonight and still make a waiver move, you need to get on your cell phone while you're listening to us and do this. And it's Dallas Goedert, the tight end that the Eagles jumped in front of the Cowboys to select in the April draft. This guy is a beast. And the Eagles, like we said, are without Alshon Jeffrey for the first few weeks. Mac Hollins, who was a kid they got out of North Carolina, was more a special teams guy, but he can really run. So the Eagles right now are going to be lining up Nelson Aguilar in the slot. They brought back Marcus Wheaton, who they cut. And I mean, Jesus Christ, you're starting Marcus Wheaton on the team, and you just won the Super Bowl.
And Mike Wallace.
Who is a fantastic signing. So Zach Ertz is going to get a lot of play in the slot, but you're going to see them going with two tight ends, I would say 70% of the time. And if you listen to Mike Groh, the offensive coordinator, he even said this week, this guy's going to be a major part of our offense. I put out on Twitter today, you can follow me at Drake Fantasy. I think he's going to go 5 for 80 and a touchdown tomorrow as Dallas Goedert, because I mean, if their best, say, safety or nickel linebacker or outside linebacker is guarding Zach Ertz, who's guarding this other monster, refrigerator running down the field? He's going to be getting, a smaller nickel corner, a kind of crappier outside linebacker, a third corner. It's nobody who can stay in front of this guy. And if you saw him in the preseason, he can put up points for fantasy. So Dallas Goedert, that's my Rookie of the Year. It's a guy who is not, he's a big first round pick like Saquon and all those guys. But if Zach Ertz gets hurt, which he's got a tendency to do, you're looking at a top 5 tight end. You can get him for free today, folks. Go to your waiver wire, pick this guy up. Trust me, you'll be happy you did.
Yeah, I like that because I've actually been talking him up a ton. And, look, this was the best tight end that came out in this draft. I'm sorry, Mike Gesicki, Hurst. These guys aren't as good. They're just not him. And the fact that he got signed to Philly behind Ertz just threw the fantasy world in a spin, and they just got off of him, didn't even think about him. Even with the kid having a great preseason, they're still not thinking about it, which is a joke. This kid is a monster. I agree with you. He's got a chance to put up Gronk-like numbers if he's the starter on any team, because he is that good. He's that strong. He's that big. He's got a tremendous arm reach. He's good at fighting for balls. I just love this kid, and he was actually my pick for my tight end sleeper in the article we did a couple of weeks ago, because I think he's going to be tremendous this year, and going forward, I think he gives the Eagles the chance to get out from Ertz's contract next year and gives them a viable starter.
Because Philly's got to pay Carson Wentz coming down the line.
Right.
So they need every penny they can find. So you're going to see a couple of guys who you think, these guys are going to be longtime Eagles. Yeah, I don't think so. They got ways. Howie Roseman has ways to get out of these contracts. Here's a little cheat move. I don't know. Tell me if you can do this in your league, because it's my favorite thing to do in fantasy football. But you have to know your settings. And this works for Dallas Goedert especially. If you have a league where you can add players, and then after they play while they're on your bench, you can then drop them still. Yahoo does this all the time. Pick up Dallas Goedert. Say you don't play him. He's sitting on your bench. Once that game's over tomorrow night and Zach Ertz doesn't get hurt, you drop Goddard. You go find a guy in the 1 o'clock game, a handcuff running back. You pick him up. He doesn't, the guy in front of him doesn't get hurt. You drop him. You pick up a 4 o'clock guy. You pick up a stash and hope guy for the night games. If you can do that in your leagues, trust me, you'll be jumping the waiver wire at least once this year. It's going to hit for you.
And that's why, folks, that's why I don't play on Yahoo.
Guys in my league hate
one of many, many, many reasons I don't play on Yahoo is for things like that.
Stupid report cards that they give out, which we've seen all over Twitter.
I hate report cards on any site. It doesn't matter. Even the sites I love, report cards are based on ADP, and you know what? I really don't care about that because my drafts don't follow ADP in any way, shape, or form. So I always get lousy grades, and I'm always happy when it happens. So that doesn't bother me. Most of the leagues I play in, you don't really have that kind of flexibility with waiver full wire, folks. But he's right. If you do in your league, then use it to your advantage. That's what you're supposed to do. Know the rules of your league, know them inside and out. And, you know, unfortunately, if you can find a loophole, then go with it.
Yeah.
It's nothing wrong with that if it's not in the rules.
If you play on Yahoo, their league day starts at 3 a.m. Eastern time because they're based out of California. So at midnight Pacific time, it switches over to the new day. So that's when all the players who are on waivers become free agents. In my league, I kid you not, there are 3 or 4 guys online at 3 a.m. Eastern adding free agents, people who weren't picked up off the waiver wire. That's how hardcore you have to be if you want to, win in some of these fantasy leagues. But who is your rookie of the year?
Oh, now I got to go. We just finished talking about something else. I totally forgot. Oh, no. Okay. Well, I mean, the easy choice, of course, was Barkley, but I couldn't put Barkley. So I ended up going with Royce Freeman. I do like Freeman. I think he's going to be a good back with Denver. I think the addition of Case Keenum actually gives them a passing attack that will play right into his hands. And I'm looking for him to come out this year and put up over 1,300 yards and score double-digit touchdowns in this offense.
Boy, I think everybody's sleeping on Denver. I said in an article we did for Fighting Chance, my sleeper quarterback was Case Keenum. Man, does he have some weapons out there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Everybody's sleeping on Demaryius Thomas, too. I mean, he's still going in the 4th or 5th round in some drafts, and that's just ridiculous for him. This man is a beast, and now that he's got a good, competent quarterback, you're going to see it, especially with a healthy Emmanuel Sanders on the other side.
And they got guys like Cortland Sutton on the bench. Their wide receivers, like 3, 4, and 5, would start for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt about that. You and I could probably start for the Dallas Cowboys.
Pretty much.
That's just the Cowboys. Oh, what was that you were drinking on over there?
Harpoon Flannel Friday.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, all the wintery, all the fall beers are out here in upstate New York where I live. So yeah, you got to get all the pumpkin stuffs out, the Oktoberfest.
I can't do pumpkin beer. I just can't do pumpkin beer.
Oh, there's some really good ones made up here. Some of them are crap because they're too spicy and you can tell they're not made very well. But if you ever can find Southern Tier Pumpkin, it's like you're drinking pumpkin pie. It's awesome. If you can find that, you know what? In fact, I'll get a bottle and I'll send one to you.
No, there you go.
And it's like 8%. So
yeah, I do like the heavier beers. I'm more of a Belgian white guy. There's one that I really love called Delirium Tremens.
Sure.
Which comes in a nice big bottle with a cork. It's just something manly about having a beer bottle with a cork in it.
Yeah. No, I know. I actually had a bottle of that in a refrigerator of mine for 2 years in the back of it. When we finally moved, my wife's like, do you need this crazy ceramic bottle that's in the back of our fridge? And I'm like, oh, I forgot about that.
I have bottles of that in my fridge almost at all times. So that and Stella Artois. I like both of them a lot.
Nothing wrong with that. You're going to like my comeback player of the year.
Okay, well, let's talk about him then.
It pains me to say this because I thought this guy was shot. But if all his weapons are being drafted in the top 5 of their position, he's got to be, contributing to. And it's Eli Manning from the Giants. You can't say that Beckham, Shepard, Barkley, Ingram, they're all going to have great years and Eli's going to suck. It can't happen. So you can get Eli for free because most leagues he's not even drafted. And you know what? And when he's got a good matchup, not this week. Don't play him this week, folks. He's going to look like trash against the Jaguars. But, going forward, I think Eli's a really good streamable quarterback.
I look, I've been saying the same thing. How can you take, Barkley in the first, Odell Beckham in the first, Ingram, fifth or sixth in some cases, even Shepard going early. How could you like all of those guys and not think that Eli gets the ball to them?
Yeah.
I definitely, the offensive line's still a mystery. We don't know. Although I'm just glad it's an all new offensive line. I really would have loved to see them kick Eric Flowers to the curb and find somebody else even for the right tackle position. But I like the addition of Nate Sauter. I like the addition of the rookie Will Hernandez, who I think is going to be a beast at guard for years. So I really love that pick when they made it. So I'm looking forward to that, to see that. The new center looks strong. It'll come together. It'll take some time. This week will be tough, but that's one of the reasons I think Pat Shurmur being the new coach, I think will help that, because he'll find ways to get the ball out of Eli's hands very quickly, especially to Barkley. So I see that helping that a lot. You can't do a 7-step drop against Jacksonville, multiple times and expect not to get sacked.
And what's really going to help Eli is something that he hasn't had in 5 years, and that's a running game. When you've got a very immobile quarterback who's a statue back there and, you're just dropping back and throwing 40 times a game, what do you expect is going to happen? The right side of that line was maybe the worst in the league. It's still not great, but it's going to be an improved offense just because now you have the threat of the run that he didn't have last year. So that's going to really help him a lot. Saquon Barkley is going to be his best friend.
Well, no doubt. And, let's face it, last year they didn't have the threat of the run. They didn't have the threat of the pass. They didn't have the threat of anything, especially when all the receivers got hurt basically in the same game. So, everything went against them last year. Hopefully it turns around this year. I think it will. I'm not saying they'll be Super Bowl contenders, but I definitely think we see them get climbing back up to where they're in the fight for the division at least.
They always scare me, man. I hate the damn Giants because – they're always good outside of last year. They always, that's, son of a gun, Tom Coughlin. They would start out, 1-4, and then somehow they turn it around, and everyone's coming to meetings even 4 hours early now. And, they turned it around, and it always bothered me because every one of my friends is a Giants fan, it seems. And they're just always competitive, and they piss me off. But yeah,
well, and that's true, and that's what. See, I'm not a big Eli fan. I'm a Giants fan forever. I'm not a huge Eli fan, just because week to week you never know which one you're going to get. But I will say this: when it's time to step up, Eli steps up. You go back to the game against the Patriots, the Super Bowl they won against the Patriots, and everybody talks about the helmet catch they made. Mm-hmm. But if you really watch that play, when was the last time you ever saw Eli fight his way out of 3 defenders and still get a pass off?
Yeah, no, it was an unbelievable play. David Tyree from Syracuse.
Yes, from Syracuse is right. So, so it definitely, I in the big games, the man steps up to play. So as long as he keeps doing that, with the numbers he has, with the longevity he's had, the fact that he's never missed a game to injury, he's, in my mind, I think he's a Hall of Famer just because of his overall numbers. Week to week, not always so much.
I had that conversation this week with a friend of mine about the Hall of Fame, and he's like, "Oh, I saw an article where they said Big Ben and Phil Rivers are definitely in, and Eli's not." I'm like, Phil Rivers over Eli's a 2-time Super Bowl MVP. Yeah, of course, he's going to the Hall of Fame. He could
wait. Now I'm going to jump in this because I like Rivers. I think Rivers as a quarterback is better than Manning on a week-to-week basis. Unfortunately, his team has never really put it together.
Sure. I mean, you've got the guy playing in the number 1 market in the country, won 2 championships. It's a no-brainer. He's going to the Hall of Fame.
And I totally agree with that. So let's keep moving. You're going to like the pick I made for comeback player of the year, and that's going to be Dalvin Cook.
Hey, there you go.
I love what we saw from him last year before the injury. Everybody's complaining about the knee injury, the ACL, but they've gotten so good at repairing ACLs. It seems like nothing anymore. I mean, I keep going back to this example, but Deshaun Watson had the same exact thing in college, came back from that in college and took his team to 2 championship games.
Yeah,
Not the same
it's
thing.
unbelievable. Yeah, you see,
ACL
like, what even with
are
Carson
so
Wentz.
easy. Yeah. So
Yeah.
easy to repair. I mean, the only difference with Carson Wentz is his happened so much later.
Mm-hmm. No, and that's the good thing about Dalvin Cook. That line scares me a little bit, but if you have a running back who catches passes and he's your 3-down back, don't give me this Latavius Murray nonsense. Enough of him, okay? Get him as your handcuff, because if Cook goes down, he can step in and still deliver you, top 15 running back numbers. But he's going to get the bulk of the carries. If you listen to any of the guys who are at camp in Minnesota, they talk about their plans for him. And, he's going to be their Saquon Barkley, their Le'Veon Bell. So you can get him at a discount. You're getting Le'Veon Bell younger at a discount with Dalvin Cook.
And I agree. I love Cook. Like I said, I've been gobbling him up everywhere. I expect big things from him. Let's keep going, but we got a bunch of questions we got to answer from the fantasy football talk site on Facebook.
Let's hear it.
Well, real quick, I just got to say this: the fantasy football talk group on Facebook is just amazing. Me, started it just to have some friends to talk about drafts and some fun stuff, because I hated all the other crap that's on Facebook, all the political nonsense, all the people that have to post their dinner every night. I got to a point where I was just about to just get out of Facebook entirely. And then I said, well, you know what? It's football season. Maybe I'll start a little group on Facebook just to have my friends and I to talk. And well, this week we actually went over 900 members in a little under 2 months. And we, not only that, but we have people involved in conversations every day. There's new conversations going on. Everybody's jumping in. I got to say, it really makes me happy to see all these people involved in that group. So thank you all for joining and being good members. And we've had very little of any of that garbage you see in most groups with name calling and all that crap. And I've been pretty much snuffing that out as soon as it happens. So I thank you all for joining. And
so how does somebody join if they want to get in, if they're listening today?
All they have to do is basically search for, fantasy football talk on Facebook. Just hit me up and I'll add you. I've been getting a lot of asked to be joined by a bunch of people that have absolutely nothing on their Facebook page.
Yeah.
Look, if you have absolutely nothing on your Facebook page, then sorry, I'm not going to add you. If you got no friends, you got no pictures, you got no posts of any kind, you're not coming into the group. Sorry.
You've got Russian bots trying to influence your draft.
Exactly. So they're not getting in. We've also had a couple of people from another group trying to get in so they could try and steal our members away. I'm like, dude, what the hell?
Who cares that much?
If you want to join your group, go ahead and just ask. You don't have to be an ass about it. So let's keep going. We got to speed this up so we can get to those questions. Let's see. Who did we talk about now? We talked about
breakout player of the year.
Breakout player of the year. Let's see. Who's your breakout player of the year?
This is a guy that I've snagged all over the place this year. Former Patriot Dion Lewis, who's now a Tennessee Titan. Everyone's seen the pictures of him next to Derrick Henry where he looks like his son in 3rd grade. But this is a guy who's going to get a ton of work in the passing game and can run the ball between the tackles. Go look at their first few games. There's about one winnable one. So they're going to be behind early and often their first 4 or 5 games of the season. Dion Lewis is going to catch a ton of balls. If you're in a PPR league, just throw your hands up and say, thank you, God. I got a guy who's going to drop 25 points a week on me.
Yeah, no, I like it. I like Lewis. I like him when he was with the Patriots. If he could stay healthy, I agree with you. I think he's a dynamic back that can do a little bit of everything. I don't care how small he is. We've seen other small guys do significant things in the NFL, even as full-time starters. He won't have to be a full-time starter, but he could have a Duke Johnson type year from this year in that offense. There's no doubt about it in my mind that if he stays healthy for 16 games, he's going to put up good numbers.
Who do you like breakout player of the year?
Breakout player of the year for me is, I got to double check. Sorry. We wrote this a couple of weeks ago. Oh yeah, this is easy one for me. I've been talking him up to death, and that's Mike Williams of the Chargers. Look,
Yeah.
I love this kid. I thought he was the best wide receiver coming out in last year's draft. He didn't get a chance to ever get established. Missed the entire preseason with injuries. Missed the first 5 games. Once you miss all that time, even when you come back, you get no reps whatsoever as a backup. They don't even put you on the field half the time in practice. So he never got established last year. He's got a full offseason this year. I think he's really going to start to show people why he was drafted so high. And I really like him a lot. And, people expect him to be just a simple red zone threat. I think you're going to be really surprised when you see the talent this kid has and can display in the NFL on a weekly basis, not just in the red zone. And no, I do not care that Antonio Gates re-signed.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, we're talking about an Antonio Gates that had 300 yards and 3 touchdowns last year. Not really that big a threat to Mike Williams. Mike Williams will be the number 2 wide receiver on that team. And if Keenan Allen goes down at all, which is a possibility, Mike Williams steps right into that number 1 role and really has a strong season.
The next category we had was Fantasy Bust of the Year. And mine's Joe Mixon from the Cincinnati Bengals. They talk about the line being improved and Bill Lazor really figuring things out there in Cincinnati. I don't see it. I think this is a team that's still bad. I mean, outside of this week, I think they get to play the Colts, but this is a line that's bad. You saw it in the preseason. The only highlights he had were actually on catches. He did nothing running the football. He still has Giovanni Bernard that they could bring in on 3rd downs. So that takes away some of that value. So now you got a guy on a mediocre team trying to run the ball between the tackles. Is he talented? Yes. Is he a 2nd, 3rd round fantasy pick? I don't think so. That's going to be a guy you're going to look back, 8 weeks from now, and you're going to be like, oh my God, this guy's killing me in my lineup. I spent a 2nd round pick on him. I wish I would have taken, Keenan Allen instead.
And that with Mixon, it really comes down to me is where you can get him. If you have to take him in the 2nd round, I agree. I would not take him in the 2nd round. In some early drafts, I actually got him in the mid 4th, which I'll take that shot.
There you go.
I have no problem with him in the 4th. In the 2nd, even in the early 3rd, I don't like him there. There's definitely many other choices I trust more. And that's the reason why I have very few shares of Mixon, especially in drafts I've done in the last month, where all of a sudden people are pushing him up. So I like that call a lot. For me, I'm going to go with Kareem Hunt. Look, I like Hunt. It has absolutely nothing to do with Hunt and everything to do with Andy Reid. Andy Reid has always been a Spencer Ware supporter. Spencer is healthy. I would not be surprised at all if we start to see Spencer getting some of that work away from Hunt. Look, Hunt had a great year. There's no doubt about it. But Andy Reid is still Andy Reid. And we even saw Hunt last year in the middle of a great year do nothing over a 4-game span because Reid decides not to use him in those game plans. That just scares the heck out of me. And again, it's not anything to do with his talent. I just don't trust Andy Reid.
I don't blame you. And he had a couple of quiet games, and I went back because he was a guy I was targeting in a few drafts, and I kind of looked. I'm like, where was a lot of his production? And he did a lot through the passing game, and I don't see Patrick Mahomes in this point in his development being able to check down and get the ball to Hunt in the passing game. I think he's going to be trying to just air it out. He wants to show off that cannon and get it deeper down the field. So I think that could be, something that's going to fall off for Kareem Hunt this year. As Alex Smith was dink and dunk and, bore you to death with that, where Mahomes
wait.
Totally
See, everybody keeps saying that about Alex Smith. He led the league last year in long plays.
He had to because he knew his job was on the line. Before that, he never did.
Quarterback. He'll play to what he has to play to. He dinked and dunked when he had to, when he didn't have a choice. All of a sudden, he finds himself with Tyreek Hill, and he can all of a sudden fling the ball down, and that's exactly what he did.
I just don't think that he's a guy that was going to take those risks unless he had to. And now he saw the writing on the wall. What's the reason they brought in, mini Brett Favre there in Patrick Mahomes? They said because he could put the ball anywhere down the field, and we'll see what he does now in his new home in Washington, because he's got a couple of nice deep threats there in Doxson and Richardson. Let's see if he pushes the ball down the field there.
Yeah, if Doxson could stay on the field, we'll see. Okay, one last category, and then we'll talk about Super Bowl. Who you like, who don't like, who you think wins it all. Right after that, but one last thing: the waiver wire pickup of the year. Um, I like your choice, especially now that the guy that I thought was in front of him is hurt, starting out hurt. But go tell everybody who you liked.
Yeah, this is a guy who maybe 2 years ago was maybe a top 15 wide receiver, and nobody is talking about him this year. And that is New York Jets wide receiver Quincy Enunwa, who is going to start for the Jets. Now, mind you, they've got a loaded receiving core with Robbie Anderson, Jermaine Kearse, who's hurt, uh, Terrell Pryor also going to sneak in there on the outside. But Enunwa is going to play in the middle of the field on a team that doesn't have really any tight end of note. Sam Darnold, like Alex Smith, has not shown a propensity to throw the ball deep down the field. He's kind of living in that short intermediate area in the middle of the field where Quincy Enunwa eats. You can get this guy off the scrap heap, put him in as your flex, your wide receiver 3, and be really surprised when he puts up 15 points a week for you. Because let's face it, the Jets are going to have to throw the ball this year. And why not throw it to a guy who their coaches over the past few years have even said, we want this guy to be our guy. So Quincy Enunwa, love him. Waiver wire pickup of the year. If you can get him today, go out and get him.
Well, I'm not as high on him as you are because I like Jerome Kearse, and we saw what he did last year. He played well. He's got Robbie Anderson, who had a good year last year as well. I think I'm right with you. I think this passing game puts up more points than people think, but at this point with a rookie quarterback, we just don't know who he favors yet, and that scares me a little bit. I'd like to see more of where he's going to typically go on any given play if it breaks down, if he's got a special receiver he's constantly looking for. If that ends up being a Nunwa, then you're right on the money, and Nunwa's going to be a star. But if not, if he ends up finding somebody else, if Kearse comes back and he likes Kearse, or he ends up picking Anderson as a guy he can pick up where he needs to, then it might hurt Nunwa a little bit. But, like I said, these guys are going to throw the ball a ton this year. And, I don't think they're going to have much of a running game. So I think one of these guys is definitely going to be a receiver you want to have on your lineup. Maybe it is a Nunua. We will soon see. And my waiver wire pickup is a guy we already talked about, so I'm just going to name him, and that's Dallas Goedert. We're not going to talk about him anymore, but definitely if he's out there, go get him because this kid is a monster. Real quick, okay, I don't really want to go into all of the divisions, who wins that. Tell me who you like in the Super Bowl and who you think wins.
I have Sean McVay and the Los Angeles Rams beating our boy here, Dougie Marrone, and the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think the Jags finally get back, and the Rams get in there, and they just have too much offense, too much defense, and they will overwhelm the Jags, and they'll be partying. All 11 fans in Los Angeles will come out and get fired up for the Rams winning a Super Bowl in their ugly uniforms with a helmet that does not match from the 70s.
Well, actually, surprisingly, I have the Rams in the Super Bowl as well, although I have them on the losing end to the Los Angeles Chargers. I think Phillip Rivers finally gets his. I think Mike Williams is a big addition to that and gives them a big play receiver opposite Keenan Allen. They have pieces in place. They always seem to make a run at the end of the season and just fall a little short. I think this year they don't fall a little short.
I'd love to see that. I'm a big Phil Rivers fan, and Keenan Allen's a good dude, and they've just had so many injuries over the years. I'd love to see him. And you know what? Just for those old San Diego fans, you know what? They lost their team. They never should have moved to Los Angeles. Playing in that MLS stadium's a joke. So it'd be nice for those old San Diego fans, kind of as their parting shot to get a title.
So let's keep going. We actually have a bunch of questions that we're going to touch on. Folks, this is WTF Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, Jim Day. Special co-host Brian Drake. You can find him at Fighting Chance Fantasy. And also, why don't you give them your Twitter handle again? It just went right out of my
just at Drake Fantasy.
Yeah,
like the rapper, but yeah, just like the rapper, but equally as a little skill.
Okay, so let's go over to the fantasy football talk. group, and let's get into some of these questions that we had them ask us, so we can get into it. Let's see. Let's start right from the top. Okay. Well, we talked about the Le'Veon Bell situation earlier. One of so I'm not really going to jump into that again. Let's see. Here's one. Week 1, Laquan Jones wants to know Alfred Morris or Isaiah Crowell. That's a that's a good matchup right there. If you're worried about starting one of these two guys, you screwed up your draft big time.
That's what I'm saying. Maybe this is a Le'Veon Bell owner. Let's hope.
Or Jerick McKinnon.
Yeah, you know what though? I can't start Alf Morris this week. The matchup against Minnesota in Minnesota is going to be really tough. Nobody scores on him up there, and he's not going to catch any passes. So he's really, if he gets 50 yards rushing, congratulations on your 5 points. You can't start him this week.
No, I totally agree with that. I'm not really liking any San Francisco. Looking at Minnesota at home, I think there's only been like one time out of the last like 10 games at home where they gave up more than 14 points. Well, maybe more than 17 points in any specific game. And most of the time it's like 10 or 14. So I can't really like that at all. It's
Jimmy G and that good hair, man.
Yeah, that good hair might throw for 4,000 yards, but I think he's going to struggle to throw for 20 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's my concern there. Let's see. We got another one here. Royce Freeman or Jamal Williams this week? Are you a Jamal Williams type guy? Do you like Jamal Williams?
Well, the first 2 weeks I do because Aaron Jones isn't there. Do I think he's special? No. Do I think the Packers even really like him? I think McCarthy kind of does, but Aaron Rodgers has hinted that he's way more on the Aaron Jones train. And where does Ty Montgomery fit in all this? He's still there. He could still do something. When I look at the Packers, I always break it down to this. They want to throw the football. I don't care who's lining up in the backfield. Aaron Rodgers is going to throw the ball 45 times, and that's where they're going to get their points. So, can you start him? Maybe. Who's the other guy? Royce Freeman?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? Throw the rookie in there. If he's going to get the touches, big coming out party, I'd rather go with him. Better offensive line.
Well, not only that, look, Chicago their defense just got noticeably better with the addition this week of a linebacker who's a generational linebacker. So all of a sudden, the middle of their defense is going to be killer.
Nick Fangio is going to have those kids ready to play. That's going to be a good fantasy defense too.
And what I like is, even last year without the addition, they were third against opposing running backs all year. So they were tight last year against opposing running backs. Look, I'm sorry. A lot of people out there like Jamal Williams. I'm not a big fan. I'm taking Royce Freeman this week. I would take him over him against Seattle, who, basically they got Earl Thomas back, which is a nice plus, but the rest of their defense has been losing players left and right. So when, as everybody's wants to say, the Legion of Boom doesn't seem to all be there anymore. So it'll be interesting to see how this defense does step up. But I like Royce Freeman at home much more than I like Jamal Williams going against that Chicago defense.
That's the thing, folks. When you're looking at these lineup decisions, look at home and away. Look at the defensive play. Don't just look at whatever the scoring system says their projected points are going to be. You got to take things into consideration yourself.
Oh God, don't ever look at projected points on these websites.
So many people, that's what they do. Go, well, ESPN says that they're going to get 10.1 points. And this guy's only 9.8, so I'm going to play. No. Make your own decisions. That's the best way to do fantasy football. Don't draft with the computer. Don't listen to projections. Go with your gut. Be smart. That's what we're here. We're here to make you smarter fantasy players. I have that in my Twitter profile. Listen to smart people and make good choices. That's what life is all about.
Let's see. Next one is up. Okay, New England running backs. Who do you like up there? You think Sony Michel ends up doing anything? David Allen wants to know from the group.
Yeah. I mean, I listened to a show where Charlie Weiss, the former OC, is on, and he talks about the Patriots offense this week. And he says, Bill is a smart guy and he's a stubborn guy, Belichick. He went out and got a cheaper Dion Lewis, and he's going to show you that he made the right move by playing Sony Michel, and he's going to get him in the offense. And this guy's a first-round pick. Sometimes NFL teams just show you what they're going to do by who they draft and signings in the offseason. They drafted this kid in the first round. Rex Burkhead is a journeyman who never stays healthy, never puts up points over the course of a long haul. Yeah, Sony Michel's going to be really damn good. And if you can, here's anybody else who doesn't own Sony Michel, pray the guy in your league drops him when he doesn't do anything the first 2 weeks. Pick him up, boom, you got a running back who's going to kill it for the rest of the year.
I agree with you. I mean, they don't waste a first round pick usually on running backs. It's wide receivers that they suck at picking.
Yeah,
but running backs, they usually find what they need. And, Michel will definitely get there. I don't think he gets off to a great start. But at the same time, I'm just not enamored with New England running backs. Just because, again, Bill Belichick, and I say this all the time, doesn't give a damn about your fantasy team. So he's going to do whatever he has to do to win. And a lot of times that doesn't meet our expectations as fantasy owners. So that really tends to steer me away from those guys way too often. Every time you think one guy is going to step up and start making plays like James White, all of a sudden he comes out and has a great game, then you don't see anything out of him for 6 weeks. And that's just too normal an activity in New England. So, I'm not a big New England running back fan. The last New England running back I had was LeGarrette Blount, and he scored me 18 touchdowns, but I'm not talking about that right now.
If you have Michel and you can put him in your roster and start him as a flex, I don't necessarily want him. Definitely, he's not your one, and you don't want him to be your two. If he's your two, you're in trouble. But if you can have that guy with that upside as a flex, now you're in business. Now you're cooking with some gas as you get down the stretch in fantasy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I hope it comes to fruition. I do have a few shares of him, but not many. I don't trust that situation. Next question up is, let's see, we got from Rick Schumann. He wants to know, Standard League, Jordan Howard of the Bears or Royce Freeman in the flex spot?
First of all, I want to know, why are you still playing in a standard league?
Yeah.
But you can't go half
like me.
You can't go half point PPR. Is there still 10 guys in this league too? Like 8-man league? Let's go. Come on, step up your game a little bit. So we got Royce Freeman and Jordan Howard.
Yes, in a standard league.
Boy, let's see here. You know what? I'm interested to see what Coach Nagy does in Chicago. And if they can get Jordan Howard playing more snaps in the shotgun where he was in college and he was very successful, I think he can have a really good year. They were going to use Tariq Cohen way more than he was last year. Tariq Cohen's going to be a factor, but I think Jordan Howard can still be explosive. And I'd take a shot on that creative offense in week one over the rookie.
Right. And week one is always the hardest week to predict, especially this offseason, because let's face it, we really didn't even get a third preseason game where we saw most of the starters on the field. So at this point, we really have no idea what any of these teams have in store for us come week one.
For the Bears, we didn't get one preseason game.
Exactly. So it's going to be really interesting. For me, I'm going with Howard in the standard. I think he has a better chance to score. There's going against the Green Bay defense that definitely gives up points to running backs. I like Royce Freeman as well. If it's me, I'm trying to get both of these guys, but if I have to pick one, it's going to be with Jordan Howard this year. So let's see, keep going. Okay, there's one. Carl Williams Shoot wants to know, if you have both Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson on your team, who do you start in a PPR league?
Why do you have both those guys in your team? You shouldn't have. I mean, it's one Cleveland running back. Okay, for depth. Two. What do you show up hammered to your draft? I think Carlos Hyde can have a good year.
Don't draft drunk.
Yeah, Carlos Hyde I think is going to have a good year. Duke Johnson last year, what did he average in a PPR? Like 12, 14 points, something like that. He was really good in a PPR. I don't see him getting to that same point because the addition of Nick Chubb, because the addition of Carlos Hyde, and they have really good receivers now. Cleveland's kind of loaded. So yeah, I'm staying away from Duke Johnson. Carlos Hyde is far and away the play in Cleveland.
And I totally agree. I've been all over Hyde since the beginning of preseason. everybody was loving Nick Chubb. And look, I like Chubb. I think he's definitely going to be the guy eventually. But
Sure.
they paid Hyde big money to play this year. Hyde gives them an all around back. And you're right about Duke Johnson. I mean, I've been telling everybody fade Duke Johnson. He's not going to have the year he had last year, not only because they also have another running back who can catch the ball in Hyde, but because all of a sudden they have receivers who can catch.
Mhm.
And if Gordon is there for 16 games with Landry, it's going to be hard for Duke to come anywhere close to what he did last year. So to me, this is easy. I go Hyde all day.
I don't see Tyrod Taylor checking it down that much to him either. He'll take off and run instead.
Yeah, right. So there's a lot of different things going on here. So, yeah, I'm definitely with you on that. Here, Mendo Bruce in the chat room, in our YouTube chat room, has a question. He wants to know week one, Njoku or Ben Watson as your tight end. Who you like?
Oh, I love Ben Watson. He's like the super
Damn, dude,
sleeper,
if
man.
you've been like in my head or something, I don't
Oh,
know.
that's a good call right there. Ooh, boy. New Orleans, I think, is going to win their game pretty handily. And I think Njoku is just a superior talent. He's a beast. Who knows how much Gordon's going to play this week? He's going to play. He says he feels good. But I'm going to go Njoku in that one, just hoping that he scores a touchdown. Because to me, he can do more in the middle of the field. He can still catch you 5 balls for 75, 80 yards. Right? I don't think Ben Watson's going to do that. He's going to be more touchdown dependent.
Wow, I don't believe that at all.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be touchdown dependent. Look,
They got a lot of weapons there, man.
Yeah, but Breeze brought him back for a reason. He had his best season with Breeze in 2015. He's coming off a good season last year after missing the entire 2016. I don't care about his age. Everybody's saying his age. Look, he didn't look like an old receiver to me last year.
That dude's in shape.
When he was a top 8 tight end. He is in shape. He's a monster beast in shape.
I got to start doing some sit-ups, man. I see these guys out there on Hard Knocks and whatever, their shirts off, and my wife's watching with me. I'm like, oh, I got to put this beer down and do a couple of push-ups.
Hey, well, that's the only reason they brought me on to Fantasy Football Frenzy was for eye candy. So
that's why you should be watching. You shouldn't just be listening to the show. You got to watch it on the YouTube channel. Let's see us do sexy beast here. And when Mrs. Sinkata comes back from Thailand, I mean, man, we're gonna be cooking with some gas here on this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. It got me all wound up now.
The thought of Tony
with an eye coming back next week. Okay, next question real quick. Somebody wants to know, everybody knows how I feel about this. What do you think of Saquon Barkley? What do you think he does this year? Is he a guy that really is a top 5 running back possibly?
Yeah, why not? The last 2 guys to lead the NFL in rushing were rookies. Why can't he do it? His line isn't great, but the team's going to lean on him. He's got a coach that loves throwing the ball to the running backs, and that's where a lot of his value, I think, is going to come, that people aren't seeing early in the season when they're drafting him. But he's going to catch a ton of balls. He's a really good athlete. So, yeah, he is good. If you can get him early and plug him in, I mean, who would you rather have, Saquon Barkley or, Joe Mixon? I mean, yeah, come on.
That's not even a choice for me.
Not even close.
Look at it this way. 6 running backs last year touched the ball 300 times. That's all. 6 touched the ball 300 times. All of them were top 10 running backs. I think Barkley is easily a 300 touch guy in this offense. So I'm looking for big things from him, not just because I'm a Giants fan. It has everything to do with opportunity and talent, both of which he has this year.
Yeah, he's damn good. As an Eagles fan, I'm scared of that dude for the next 10 years.
Okay, so I got another question here from Ken Zimmerman, a new member to the group. Welcome, Ken. He wants to know, he has C.J. Anderson on his roster,
okay,
but he's thinking of dropping him for Alfred Morris.
Yeah, I mean, unless you have Christian McCaffrey, that's a move I think you have to make, because Alfred Morris is, quote unquote, a starting running back. He's going to get work in a Kyle Shanahan offense. Shanahan has proven year after year after year, him and his father, that they can get running backs fantasy points. So, yeah, you need a guy who's going to be getting touches versus kind of a stash and hope backup guy. And in Carolina, we know the best goal line back is Cam Newton. He's going to vulture tons of touchdowns from McCaffrey, from Anderson, from anybody else they could put out there. So, yeah, go out and get yourself a little elf from Melmac.
I'm not so sure. Look, man, Morris is bounced around. He keeps, he makes a little splash, he goes away. He makes a little splash, he goes away. I think Breida is actually a better running back if healthy. I just don't know if it's worth it. Look, CJ Anderson coming off 1,000-yard season. I know they want to give Christian McCaffrey a ton of touches and yards, and I think he can hold up to it. But if he can't, then CJ Anderson steps right into a great role. Man, I would have a tough time with that because I honestly, if I drafted bad enough that I would have to consider starting Alfred Morris on my team, it's time for me to quit this.
No, I understand what you're saying. CJ Anderson could be the guy that is the waiver wire pickup of the year. When we talk about that, it's all about how your roster is constructed and what you want to do. I mean, if you really have to play these two guys, you're struggling. But for me, end of the bench stash, I want playable depth is what I call it. I want somebody who in a bye week, you can play Alfred Morris. I don't know how much run CJ Anderson's going to get.
Well, and I don't either. We just don't know at this point. There is definitely a lot of concern. I was really surprised that they brought him in. I mean, I know they had Jonathan Stewart, and he went to the Giants and just is nothing at this point.
What a horrible move by Dave Gettleman. That was terrible.
He tends to make a
few. Wayne Gallman's the backup there, folks. If you have Saquon Barkley, get Wayne Gallman. He's the guy that's going to play.
And there's no doubt in my mind. I totally agree with you on that. But at the same time, you Anderson coming off a great year, you bring him in to back up McCaffrey. I get that, and I do think they'll run enough that they'll have to use both of them at some point. I just don't know if Anderson is going to see more than 10 touches a game to start, if that many, and that scares me. But I do know that McCaffrey trying to touch the ball 300 times is definitely an injury waiting to happen in my mind.
That's like the spider crawling across my floor. Like, his time is limited. As soon as this podcast ends, he's going to get hurt. Let me ask you, you're a guy that plays a lot of fantasy and does a ton of drafts. The end of your bench, say that 5th, 6th, 7th guy, however deep your benches are, do you want someone, like I say, playable depth like Alfred Morris, or are you leaving that last guy as a shoot for the moon kind of Traquan Smith player?
I shoot for the moon with those last bench spots. I want a guy that if he gets his absolute chance, he's going to step in and become a starter. I've taken some weird shots in late drafts this year, most notably Cordarrelle Patterson. Look, I've never been a huge fan of his game, but if anybody's ever going to get anything out of him, then it's going to be Belichick. And with their passing offense the way it is right now, especially without Edelman on suspension, somebody's going to be making plays in the end zone besides the Gronk.
Yeah.
Because defenses are just going to stack Gronk with 4 guys on top of him and say, you know what, you want to beat me, you ain't doing it with him. And I think Patterson is that other option in the red zone. So
he endorsed that. I think the fantasy community is sleeping on those two guys.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting how it plays out. But I think he has a shot to put up, 7, 8 touchdowns this year. He's not going to have a ton of receptions, won't have a ton of yards, but he's going to have weeks where he just hits, and that's why I really like him in best ball. And I really I've taken a lot of shots on him in best ball leagues.
Plus, if he returns kicks, imagine if he returns kicks.
Right
now, I mean, he's going to break 1 or 2,
and we've seen him do that way too often. So I agree with you there. So I always like taking high upside guys that have a chance to really break out deep on my bench.
That was Brian from Syracuse crowbarring a question in there.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. We got any more in the chat room here? Let's see. Give me some other real quick. Oh, we're over time. I didn't even watch the clock. See, it goes too fast sometimes. One player real quick off the top of your head. We didn't talk about this at all, but one player off the top of your head that you think is a major surprise this year. And don't say Goddard. We already talked about him.
If he stays healthy, I said it on Twitter today, Sam Bradford's a top 12 fantasy quarterback.
Ooh, I love the call, man. I love him as a quarterback. I do. He's such a good quarterback. He plays so well that, you just hate to see him keep going down
Yeah.
each and every time he gets a chance. So yeah, that bothers me a little bit. But yeah, I love him as a quarterback. I mean, the man got all the talent. He could make every throw on the field. He's got good eyes. He knows how to look defenses off. It just
He's a
he can't just stay on the field, and that's a pain in the
He's
neck.
a professional quarterback. God only knows who he's throwing it to there in Arizona. Maybe Ricky Seals Jones, Christian Kirk. Who knows? It's all Larry and DJ all the time. But I think he could have a really good year. If you're streaming quarterbacks, not this week, but look down the line, Sammy Bradford is going to bring his big baggy sleeves to your lineup.
Well, there you go. That's a good call. For me, I think Marshawn Lynch is going to surprise a ton of people. People are still drafting him, but he still falls to the 7th round in a lot of drafts. And you know what? I think he has something he wants to prove to everybody. And if there's anybody in this league I'm going to bet on wanting to prove something and actually doing it, it's going to be Marshawn Lynch, especially this week, game 1, under the lights on national TV. I think he comes out wanting to show something. So this is going to answer Mendo Bruce's question in the chat room. For me, anyway, Lynch or Jamal Williams in week 1? Which one do you like?
Oh, come on. Yeah, it's Lynch. He broke a really long touchdown in the preseason that got called back for a penalty, and he was running away from defensive backs. He looks really good and really in shape. I forget Doug Martin. They're not going to be giving Doug Martin the rock. He's not old enough. I mean, he's old, kind of washed up. But he's not old enough to be in John Gruden's, starting lineup. Everybody's got to be, 35 plus. So Doug Martin's got a couple years to go.
Well, there it is, folks. And we went a little overtime tonight, Brian and I talking about some crazy stuff and getting into some good conversations for you all. Brian, why don't you tell everybody once again where they can find you?
Yeah, come find me over at Fighting Chance Fantasy. We're writing some good articles over there, and you can catch me on Twitter at Drake Fantasy. I'd like to talk to you over there. Send me a message. We'll talk football. We'll talk pro wrestling, talk beer, whatever you want to talk about. It's that's the beauty of Twitter. That and then, political fights that everyone's getting into these days.
Nah, not me. I don't do political fights. I hate all politicians. I think they should all be strucken from the earth. But that's just me.
Thank you so much for having me, by the way. I really do appreciate you giving me the call here to come on. It was a joy to come spend some time with the legend, Jim Day.
Legend in my own mind, as my wife likes to say.
No, I loved it. Thank you so much for having me, man. It was a joy, and I can't wait to watch some more podcasts as the season goes on with you and the new lovely Mrs. Sincata.
Well, and I'm going to talk to Mrs. Sincata because I got to be honest with you. I thought you did such a great job this week that if you are so inclined, I wouldn't mind inviting you to come back and join us as a permanent co-host.
Hey, I'll come back and talk to you guys whenever you want to talk fantasy football, just as long as I kill this damn spider down here in the basement.
Well,
he's like taunting me. He's looking at me in the corner.
Folks, this is the WTF Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Jim Day. You can find me on Twitter at FantasyTaz. You can also find me every day at 1 o'clock on the Fantasy Football Frenzy on the Fantasy FNTSY Fantasy Sports Network. Also, starting this Sunday, every Sunday morning at 8 o'clock, I'll be on for 2 hours with Mike Blewett talking about the games to come. And then every Sunday night at 8 o'clock, I'll be joining Scott Engel talking about the day in review. So
the King!
4 hours. Yeah, the King. That's going to be an interesting one. I love Scotty to death, but he's going to make me nuts. So that's going to be a very interesting radio show. Those two are not video podcasts. They'll be radio shows only on the Fantasy Sports Network. So definitely go over to their site, take a listen. We should have some good times with that. Folks, it is time for us, and we are out. Have a good night, all, and enjoy week 1. I know I will.